Live Kabbalah is a non-profit organization founded for the distribution of the wisdom of Kabbalah and its values. Learning the original principles of this wisdom can reconnect us with the true values of our society, including the belief in the dignity and freedom of man, democracy, and the freedom of speech.
Hello everyone, this week we're in Parashat Mishpatim. Mishpatim means laws. Simply laws, because if in Israel you go to a law school, you go to study Mishpatim. That's the same word. 34 centuries ago, same word for the same topic. However, if we go to this parasha does not have a story. It is laws. A list of laws of basically the Hebrew law, the biblical law. All the books that are based on the biblical law are based on this parasha. Laws of laws and laws, a list of laws one by one. And, studying Hebrew law, you can't without this parasha, for sure. The point is, if this is the Hebrew law, and the Hebrew law, the biblical law, is eternal, we have a problem the moment we start to read. Why? Start with the words in the beginning of the parasha. It's Exodus chapter 21, verse 1. And these are the laws that you shall place before them. The translation I have in front of me, it says these are the ordinances. Simple Hebrew. You ask every Israeli kid what Mishpatim means. It means laws, and ordinances, I don't think the word belongs to it, because it's I don't know why they put this word. Maybe to make it like lofty, because that's the Bible. You can't have an everyday word for the Bible. But anyway, this is this translation. There are like dozens of translations, much more than that, to English. So we don't have to go by each one of them. And then we go to verse 2. Ki tikneh, heved ivri. If you buy a Jewish bondsman, I don't know what bondsman means, but it says a slave. In Hebrew, it's simply the word a slave. It says not if. I don't understand why these translations are this. It says when you buy a Hebrew slave, 6 years he will work. On the 7th he will go to free. And what's the word over here? For no charge. What I mean for no charge? You don't pay for it. If he comes by himself, he will live by himself. If he comes with his wife, then he lives with his wife. If his master will give him a wife, and she gave him boys and girls, the woman and her children will stay under the master, and he can go by himself. And if the slave will say, after 6 years, I love my master, and I love my wife, and I love my children, I will not go free, which means I do not want to be released from slavery, and then his master will bring him to God, and bring him to the door, on the doorpost, to the mezuzah. The mezuzah, this is the parchment that you put the Shema Yisrael in a parchment on the doorpost, and he should be, what's the word? And he should bore the ear to the doorpost, to the earlobe, to the doorpost. Terrible. Why? We'll see soon. But I don't know when was the last time you bought a Hebrew slave, but that law does not seem to be relevant for our days and for the last who knows how many centuries. Now, the second paragraph is, and when a person will sell his his daughter, as a maid, she will not live as slaves, but anyway, just come back. When a person sells his daughter, that's illegal. In most countries, this is terrible. Does the Bible allow that? Okay. Let's go to the next paragraph, verse 12. Makeh ish v'met mot yumat. Translation: one who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. Oops. Which means if you hit somebody, strike somebody and he dies, that person will be killed. But for one who had not lain in ambush, and God had caused it to become to his hand, I shall provide you a place to which you shall flee. Just a second. Look at the words. If somebody killed a man, and it was not premeditated murder, it was an accident. And it says, and God had caused it to come to his hand. If it says clearly God caused it to come to his hand, so why should the person be here? We already know who's the culprit. God. He made it happen to him. So the guy can come to court and say, like, what do you want from me? God caused it. Says in the Bible, God had caused it to happen through me. What do you want from me? Why do I have to flee? And they were in Israel, in ancient Israel, there were refuge cities that if you killed somebody by mistake, you had to run to that city. You were safe from vendetta living in that city. And you would sit in that city till the high priest will die. And therefore the Talmud says that the mother of the high priest would go and feed the people in this refuge city so they don't pray for her son to die. Because when he's dead, they can get out. But what if you go to a refuge city and the high priest died a week later? Then you're immune. Nobody can kill you. Because some people say, oh, that was ancient times in the Middle East. The Middle East is still the principle of vendetta till today. Big problem in the Israeli law. When you have a big community of people with local traditions like Muslims or Christians, Arabs or Jews or other kinds of communities or Bedouins, and if somebody killed somebody, the whole clan of the person that was murdered is now going to have a vendetta from the clan of the person that killed. And it's a big problem because they can kill each other for decades. It can go on. Now, it says it's still a problem today. Because what do you do? How do you stop them doing that? You need a whole special police department to deal with the vendetta issue because it's illegal. Now, who do you throw to jail? The whole family? It could be a clan of 3,000 people. What do you do? The point is that the commentators say in ancient times it was very hard to change the habit. But here you do change the habit. The moment you say, if the high priest dies and the person is free to go back to his home, then the Torah says you cannot touch him. It's not that you protect him in a refuge city for the rest of his life. What about the rest of the clan, his family? It's not easy. This is not relevant. You don't do this today. Somebody killed somebody by an accident, a car accident. Why you have to go to a refuge city? He goes to court. They prove it was not premeditated murder. It was an accident, and then he has to, maybe it was negligence, maybe it was that. He has, his license could be revoked. He could sit in jail for a while, but then nobody will. What is that God made it happen, caused it to be by him? Still, you can't apply it to modern court. And here's another one. If you steal, that's verse 16. 15 is, if you beat up your father and your mother, that's that sentence. Just beating up. That's not being applied. I don't think so. We'll have a lot of executions if we have that. 16. And if you steal a person and sells him to be a slave, and he was found in his hand, that's that sentence. Okay. If you curse, the person who curses his father and his mother will be put to death. Okay, we have a lot of problems. And the next one, verse 18. When two people fight, and one person beats up his friend with a stone or with a fist, and he doesn't die. He just got sick. If he gets up and he walks outside on a staff, then the one who's beating is clean. He only has to pay, the days he's not going to work, and he has to pay the money of healing, which means the doctor's fees. Okay, that sounds a little bit more reasonable. You can apply it to modern law. Okay? Still, we have a lot of problem. Why? Because if the Torah is eternal, what we read, most of it is not applicable to our society. So I can say, I don't need this book. Somebody, like many people say, somebody has to have the guts and to rewrite the book so it fits our days. Because it's not relevant. This is an old religion, doesn't fit our days. That's one way to do with it. The other way is the way of the Zohar. And then you come to the Zohar. By the way, the Zohar is not much younger than the Torah, because if the Torah was written 34 centuries ago, according to tradition, the Zohar was written 2,000 years ago. So I don't know for how many people it really makes a difference, 2,000 or 34,000. It's still very old, very, very old, and you can't tell the difference. I don't think so. Most people can't tell the difference. And the Zohar says as follows, Patach Rabbi Shimon and said, Rabbi Shimon opened and said, and these are the laws that you will put in front of them. What does it mean? And he says, these are the rules of reincarnations. Because laws, these are rules. But he says we're not talking about the laws of everyday life that we see with the visible eye. It's the rules of the reincarnation of the soul. One of the most famous laws in this Parashat, I think many people heard that verse, and that's like a few verses ahead, verse 24. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a leg for a leg, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, and a bruise for a bruise. Okay? That's the whole complete verse. Everybody knows an eye for an eye, but that's everything in it. However, that sounds really tough. If somebody knocks somebody's eye out, what does it mean? That court should order to knock your eye out? If you learn Jewish law, the history of Jewish law, that has never been applied. Never. Ever. Why? There are two layers to the biblical law. One layer is called the Noahide law, which is applicable to every human being. Why? If we understand that all humans are descendants of Noah after the flood, Noah and his family. So there were two covenants. One covenant was between Noah and God after coming out of the ark. In that covenant, there are 7 laws that are basically branched out into 66 laws. And these are universal laws to every human being. Then there was a second covenant, that was Mount Sinai, Revelation, from last week. And that was applied to the people who were on Mount Sinai. And that's an addition. But it does not come instead of the Noahide laws that are the basic universal laws. And one of the basic universal laws is about you can't hurt animals. That's one of the 7 universal laws. And that means, one of the meanings is that you cannot take a frog and pull a leg and eat it while it's still alive. You cannot do that. That's because the damage, let's go to the Kabbalistic reason, because the damage you do to your soul is so terrible. And that's why you don't do it. Because cruelty is a disease. It disconnects you from the light of God. Not just, have pity to the animals, it's not nice. Leave the not nice alone. The question is that every people, why would they keep the laws? There's always must be there what's in it for me. And if you will understand the rules of life, the first rule is that you learn in Kabbalah that everything we are about we are about the desire. A desire for what? A desire to be fulfilled. To be fulfilled with what? With God's light. There's no other desire. So sometimes you believe that God's light is in that object, in that money, in that job, in that victory, in that reward, in that food, whatever. in that woman or man, children, whatever, but basically what you really want is that illumination or enlightenment that fulfills your soul. And the rules that the Torah puts in front of us are the rules of how could you make it happen. We spoke about it last week. There's nothing but that. And if you create cruelty by action, physical action or words or a look, whatever kind of a behavior, or not doing something, the first victim is your soul. Because your relationship with God, which is everything that your life is about, it's all about everything that we go through is about one thing and one thing alone, which is our relationship with the light of God. When we have a good relationship with the light of God, we are fulfilled, and then everything looks great. Then we have the patience to go through whatever we have to go through. Then we have the ability, the vision to see that whatever we're going through is for the good reason. Then we have the power to overcome. We have the ability to learn. We have the open-mindedness to grow, to jump, to expand. And we don't have that relationship with God, then whatever happens, it's never enough. It's always a problem. It's always in spite. It's always against you. It always be translated as pain, misery, and no hope. So, there's nothing else in this life but the relationship between the person and his creator. All the story of life is around it. If you check whatever you do, it's all about that story and nothing else. The laws that the Bible brings are simply, again, the word Bible, I don't know, it's coming from another word, but the Hebrew is Torah. You can say that the English word theory is from that word, Torah. Torah is the teachings. Is a theory which means the teachings, the wisdom, and the teachings of living in this world. That's what Torah is about. Same thing, it's the same word. When you say how do you say in Hebrew? A teacher is Mora. Somebody who is giving that teaching is a teacher. And to teach is lehorot. It's all coming from the same root, which is to teach. These are the teachings of how to connect to the Creator, and the Torah has advices how to do it in the best and the shortest way. And if you think you can have pleasure by eating a limb or part of an animal when this animal is still alive, or cut that part when it's still alive, don't do that. You think it looks like it's fun, but your soul is being hurt. And when your soul is hurt, your relationship with the Creator is hurt. Because inflicting pain on somebody else is very hurtful, first of all, to your soul. Your soul is the first victim in whatever you did, in this case. So, when the Zohar says last week, when we learned that it's not the 10 commandments, but the 10 utterances, or 10 advices, that Rabbi Shimon is saying, it's all advices for a person how to complete his soul. So let's see how this week's reading is a direct continuation of the last week's, because this is the 6th reading of the book of Exodus. The final of the 6 weeks of the Shovavim. 6 weeks of corrections. How? Here you have all the rules laid in front of you. So what is slave issue? Okay, we spoke about slavery last week. We said that the first of the 10 utterances is, I am the Lord your God that took you out of Egypt, the house of slavery. And you have, and that comes back to what we said before. As long as you remember that it's all about your relationship with the Creator. And the moment you realize that that relationship is more important than anything else, no matter what somebody else does, say, whatever, the moment you become afraid of what other people think about you or do about you, the moment you fall into that, it doesn't mean you shouldn't care, but the moment you become enslaved to that, you're not anymore in connection with the Creator, and you hurt your soul. And everybody knows when you hurt your soul, when you allow that fear or anger or any kind of discomfort to control your decision-making process, you're in trouble. So, only free people can be free-minded. And only people with free mind can really live in this world and gain what this world has to offer. This world has nothing to offer for slaves, only pain and misery. This world has to offer everything to free human beings. So, when we read that, then let's go and continue what the Zohar has to say about, so what is the slavery issue that we started with? I think you already got the hint. Last week we spoke about slavery. The whole 6 weeks we spoke about slavery. What kind of slavery? It's not the ancient kind of slavery. We're talking about our own slavery. And that's what the Zohar says. And the Zohar says as follows. When you buy a Hebrew slave, 6 years he should work. On the 7th he will go to free with no charge. Now, free of charge. Now, the simple explanation is that in the ancient Hebrew law, there was no jail punishment. Why? Jail is very expensive. And it's not doing any good to anyone, not to society, and not to the people, not to the prisoners. Jail in most countries is the best university for crime. Why? Because if you learn the basic rule in spiritual growth, that you have to make yourself a friend, a teacher, and buy yourself friends, or what the sages are saying, tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. Which means if this is becoming your environment, crooks, criminals, murderers, and stuff like this, who would you come out of this place? You'll become more like them, and less a free human being. So you can't send them to be with each other, because that's just strengthen the problem they have. How would they refix their relationship with their soul and with the Creator? Jail is not the place for that. So if you read the whole Bible, there's no jail punishment. So what was the punishment? So you catch the thief, and, or as we said before, the guy hit another guy, and the guy that was the victim now he has to pay him. The days that he didn't work, he has to pay him for the medical expenses and stuff like this, and he doesn't have the money. What do? You sell him as a slave. And the law says you can't sell him for more than 6 years. Who do you sell him to as a slave to? Oh, not everybody can buy a slave. Only a person that is educational figure, a role model. While he buys that guy as a slave, meanwhile, the criminal has a different environment, a different surroundings to be educated. He can see there are different ways to live. It has to be somebody who is a role model. And there are laws. If you buy yourself a slave, you can't, and you sleep on a nice bed, you can't let him sleep on the floor. He's your brother. So he has to sleep on a nice bed as you. What if he doesn't have? If you don't have you have only one bed. You have to give him your bed. You have to show an example. This is an educational journey you go through. That's a different way to deal with criminals, right? I don't know if it's applicable today, but we can learn something from that, because so many people sit in jail today in free, modern, democratic countries, and it doesn't make it better. It just takes a lot of money that can be invested in education. The system is not working. That we know. However, the Zohar said this is not the story. Well, what does it mean that he goes on the 7th, he goes free of charge? What do you mean free of charge? That means that the slave does not have to buy his freedom? Is that what it means, the Zohar is asking? No, the Zohar said this is a secret. What is a secret? And that's how we learn. It says, one of the moments in the journey of the Israelites in the desert, out from Egypt, they complain. And they say, we remember the fish that we ate in Egypt, free of charge. And what does it mean free of charge? Oh, the translations are saying that in Egypt, when we ate food, we did not have to bless on the food. The moment we left Egypt and we got Mount Sinai revelation, now you have to bless on the food. Which means you have some duties. When you eat something, you have to understand that eating is also part of your relationship with the Creator. You have to be thankful. You have to be responsible because, according to Kabbalah, one of the reasons, the major reasons of eating, is that because of the sin of Adam, that Adam and Eve were basically one big soul of all of humanity. And because of the sin of Adam, humanity broke into many, many, many little pieces. What the Kabbalists are called sparks. The big sparks became human beings. These are the souls of human beings reincarnating again and again and again till they reach completion. The smaller sparks fell into the other kingdoms, inanimate, vegetable, animal kingdoms. When we eat, we have responsibility to uplift these sparks of light in the food that we eat. And how do we do that? We have to have responsibility, to have consciousness involved, that I don't eat just for the pleasure. By eating and putting love and excitement into the food that I eat, I elevate. With the blessing, I elevate the sparks that are in the food that I eat. And part of the tikkun of a human being is to be responsible, to understand that everything you do, whatever you eat, whatever you buy, whatever you sell, that connects to the process of fixing and correcting your soul. It's all about the light that comes from the Creator, or the light that you have to reconnect back to the Creator. That's a different dimension. So, now, when we are not slaves anymore, we have to make blessings on the food. We have to be responsible. You can't just see the food and eat it just because you feel like. You have responsibility for whatever you do. And that was the complaint, remembering the fish that we ate in Egypt for no charge. It's not for no charge. It's for no effort. Spiritual effort. That in Egypt we did not have any yoke or responsibility from above. Why? Come and see. Slaves, they are exempt from the yoke of the heavenly kingdom. That's what the Zohar says. Why? Because when you're a slave, you're a slave. You're a slave to your master. You're a slave to your emotions. You're a slave to consequences. You're a slave to all what happens around. And you're just full of misery. Why are you a slave? That's being a slave. You cannot be focused on taking charge and responsibility for the world around you and for your soul. You have no responsibility. It's a difference between being a slave and being a free human being. And therefore, because they do not have the responsibility of the heavenly kingdom, they are slaves. And therefore, they're exempt from the mitzvot. What are the mitzvot? As we said last week, are the tools for a person to perfect his soul. A slave is not into the deal of perfecting his soul. This is a slave. Now look around yourself and think how many people you know are slaves and how many people are free human beings. How can you tell the difference? Very simple. The slaves, they look like slaves. Everything that bothers them. The worst thing is like, you meet people in America and you want to talk to them and say, today is a bad day. And I would always like, oh my God, why would you say something so horrible? Don't say it's a bad day. You can say, I don't have the time today. Why saying it's a bad day? Because you're a slave. The moment you allow the day to be a bad day, you're a slave. You just in that moment, you proclaim yourself as a slave and that does not have control over his life and over his day. That's what you just said. Which means in that moment you say that you don't have responsibility. It means that when I feel like angry, I'll be angry. When I feel like being miserable, I'll be miserable. When I feel like killing somebody, I'll kill somebody. When I feel like stealing something, I will steal something. unless I have bigger fear to be caught, which is also being a slave. When a free human being looks at that object that he can steal and says, I would love to have this object. However, what really I want is not the object. Whatever I want is the light of God within that object. And you can't have it for free. That's as we said, we remember the fish that we ate for free. Nothing is for free. No free lunches in this world. You want the light in that object, you have to work for it. You see what that person has? Work so you have it yourself. But taking it from that person is not going to make you happy. Why? You can take the atoms, you can take the object, you can take the physical presence of the object, but you cannot take the light of God within. This you cannot take. And that's why you do not steal, because of that. Not because you're afraid to be caught by the police or by somebody who's going to see you. If this is what stops you from stealing, you're a slave. So the fact that you are an honest person, it doesn't mean that you're an honest person. It means you're afraid. How do we know that? You can take societies of very honest people, law-keeping people, and then have a little drama. Let's say there's a blackout for 3 nights and 3 days, and see what happens to people. How the most law-abiding people start to scream, to steal, to push in the street when you don't have electricity, when everything is dark, when you don't have food. So people start to break into supermarkets. Like, things like this happen in big cities, in modern countries, and then you say, these are nice cities. This is democratic societies with education. How come people behave this way? Or any kind of disaster areas, earthquake and so on, when a structure of society is gone, no police, no court, would people still behave by the same law? Most people won't. Why? Because what held them together before was the fear of punishment, physical punishment. And when that's the story, the moment they have the opportunity and the pressure, they will steal, they will kill. And history can tell us many, many examples. And this is what the Torah is teaching us. This is not going by the law. This is simply superficial. And if you have superficial society, the moment of test will come, and it will fall apart. And that's what we see. The people today, when they have the power to steal, they steal. We're talking about big money. We're talking about the big corporations on earth. You have the power to steal, and you steal because you don't really go by the law of God. You just go by the law of humans. So you take lawyers and accountants that find a way around the law. And maybe you are okay by the law, but everybody knows that you're a crook. And that's why people today do not believe the law system, police system, political system, and the big corporations around the world. Because the moment the values are not the values of this book, but it's all about your relationship with the Creator, then you understand what the Zohar says. It's all about not willing to take the yoke of heavenly kingdom, which means this is the only kingdom, not the earthly kingdom. The earthly kingdom, sometimes the policeman is there, sometimes he's not. Sometimes you think that he's not, you'll be caught later on. And then what you were thinking when you were doing that, and then you say, but everybody was doing that. That's not a good enough reason. So you were a slave to what everybody was doing. You can never be happy because you're a slave. So what is the yoke of the heavenly kingdom? It's like the Zohar says, like this bull, this ox, that is put a yoke on him to get something good out of him to the world. Which means I carry the yoke because I woke up in the morning to do something for this world. That's called responsibility. That's somebody who's a public servant. That's somebody who is a private business or something like this. Because whatever you do, you have to understand you have responsibility for your society. Why there's such disaster on earth is when people do not understand that they have a responsibility. That if every human will have that yoke on himself, this planet is an amazing paradise. Humanity today, we can grow more food that we can eat. We can build more housing that we can dwell in. We can produce more goods that we can buy. So why there's so many hungry people? Why there's so many homeless people? It's because we grab and we think nobody is watching. Yes, you think so, but your soul is watching. You can't cheat your soul, you can't cheat your relationship with the Creator. And when you're a slave, it will never be enough. Not the money, not the houses, not the food, will never be enough. Because you're a slave. And a slave can never be happy, because he's a slave, or she. And if he does not accept that yoke on himself, he doesn't do anything. And therefore a person has to accept that yoke on himself in the beginning of everything. And then he should walk with that yoke. Whatever you should do. How do you know what you should do? Look around. If you're working in that government job, that's your yoke. If you just, you're working in the supermarket and selling this and that, that's your work. You always have this responsibility, as we said last week. You can be a slave, you can be a son of God. The slave, he does it to get by. The son of God has the yoke of his father's heavenly kingdom. He does everything he does because God put me here. My life cycle put me here. My job, my tikkun, put me here so I can create as much light as possible in that what I'm doing right now. But I want to be the king of the world. You'll be the king of the world if you just first do that job, then do another job. Till the system will test you. But if the person does not accept that yoke from the beginning, he cannot work, because that's not work. What the slave is doing is not work. A work that you give to somebody, does it to get by. That's not what you want. And that yoke is not available to somebody who is under somebody else's control. And therefore, slaves are exempt from the yoke of the heavenly kingdom. We're not talking about slaves of ancient times, or slaves in, there's still slavery in the world. Why there's still slavery in the world? Because still people accept the idea that I'm not responsible. That it's not between me and the Creator, and my Creator, not somebody else's Creator. A slave is exempt from the yoke of the heavenly kingdom because the moment the person is afraid from his wife, from his boss, from her husband, from the kids, from the neighbors, from whatever, the moment you're a slave, you're not doing any job. And the job is one job. How do you improve the relationships with the light of the Creator? That's the only job. And how do you do that? When serving other people, serving your soul. And if they're exempt from that yoke, they're exempt from other mitzvot also. Because the other mitzvot, they cannot be given to the people till that person has the yoke of the heavenly kingdom. Which means, what for, the laws of, holidays, Shabbat, any kind of laws. You're exempt. Why are you exempt? How can you do that and be afraid of somebody or be addicted to something, if you're enslaved, you're not connecting to the right thing. You're not connecting your soul to that light of the Creator. And that will give you fulfillment. People are enslaved to something, they're never happy. They're always empty. That's being a slave. You become a slave to the emptiness. And therefore, the people of Israel that were slaves in Egypt, they were eating in Egypt for free. What does it mean for free? Free of yoke, free of responsibility. And that's what it says over here. When it says that he is going to freedom, free. What does it mean free? That now he's a slave, and whatever he's doing, it's for free, without the yoke of heaven and kingdom. Although all what he did when he was a slave, it was not for the heaven and kingdom. Now he can rest from that, and he can be free. Being really free means he can take responsibility. What a weird way to say. Only free people can take responsibility. Slaves cannot take responsibility. For so many people, this is an oxymoron. Most people think a free person has no responsibilities. In Hebrew, the word for cherut, it's the same word almost as achrayut, responsibility. One letter difference, aleph. And aleph means the light. Or, you take freedom, you add light, that's responsibility. Only people who take upon themselves the yoke of the heavenly kingdom, which means they are responsible for what they do, what they think, and they never blame circumstances or anyone for what happens. It's me. It's all about my relationships with the universe around me. And I take responsibility to improve it. Only a person that can take responsibility has the freedom, the real freedom, and that makes the connection to the light. That's why the aleph comes in, to the word cherut. Then you have the light. If you look around and you see people that have the light, really having the light, it's only people that have that rule. So this parasha is about taking responsibility. It's about being responsible for who you are and what you are in every minute. And that's why you have to learn the laws. The laws are how you take responsibility. To understand there's a reason for everything. And after he's free, then he can get the yoke of heaven. And because from heavens, he was taken out of freedom, because I am God your Lord that took you out of Egypt, the house of slavery. And if the person is refusing to go to freedom, as it says, if the slave will say, I love my master, I want to stay a slave after the 6 years. Why? I don't have responsibility. My master is taking care of everything. I just have to get up in the morning, do what he tells me, and then, I'm free. You're not free. You're a slave. Of course, at that moment that you like the slavery, that person blemishes that cosmic place that took him out of freedom. He leaves the yoke of the heavenly kingdom. He releases it, and he takes it upon himself, slavery by choice. And therefore it says, and his masters should bring him to God, to the door. What's on the door? The mezuzah. What's on the mezuzah? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Which means, there's only one Lord. You take another Lord, the ear that is representing the 50th gate, Sfirat Binah, that is where you blemish it, and that's where you have to have a physical blemish over there, because to show that you blemish that place, taking slavery. The ear that heard of Mount Sinai, I am God your Lord, who took you out of Egypt, the house of slavery. Okay. So, of course, There are many other laws. And let's go to just some of them. When it's saying an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, whatever. And how can you get somebody's eyes out when you're not allowed even to do it to a frog? That's against the basic universal laws. And therefore, then you need the commentators. And that's why this Parashat has so many books of commentaries. And the first thing is, you never read it literally. He doesn't say that court should take the person's eye out. He says, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, whatever. And what does it mean? The Zohar says this is a cosmic law. If you take somebody's eyes out, you create so much pain in the universe. And that pain, what goes around comes around. It will come back to you. An eye for an eye. Whatever you inflict on others will come back to you. The job of court is to stop this vicious cycle. Because then you're hurt, then you hurt somebody else. And then he hurts you, and you hurt him. Or you hurt somebody else, and people hurt each other, and that doesn't stop. And the purpose of court, a spiritual court, is to look at a person that took somebody else's eye and to bring him to a place in which he can compensate, he can feel somebody else's pain. And when you pay the damage, when you're responsible for the healing process, when you take again responsibility for what you've done, then it's an eye for an eye. If you're not, what is your hit and run? And you run away, nobody caught you. Still an eye for an eye. So one day, you're going to have an accident. One day, maybe next lifetime, you'll become a doctor, an eye doctor. And now you have to be taking care of people's eyes in order to fix what you messed up. But what if you don't take care of the patients? What if you do not take responsibility for the patients? You're just taking care only for the mortgage of the beautiful house you bought. Then you will have to become blind. Next lifetime. An eye for an eye. Which means these are the cosmic rules. That's what Rabbi Shimon is saying. Now, the purpose of court is how do you take the person out of the vicious cycle of hurting and being hurt, hurting and being hurt, by taking responsibility, by saying, teaching the person. You see, that's the damage you've done. Now, the only way you can get out of that cycle is understand the pain of somebody else. If you understood that pain of somebody else in the first place, you will never do it in the first place. So that's again, what about the person that killed by mistake? By accident. And it says, and God calls it to happen. Again, we know very well that when we do not take responsibility for what we do, we start to have accidents. Because people are really careful about what they do, they have less chances. Whoever knows about be careful on the road, understand that. People have a lot of responsibility for the way they drive. Do not drink and drive. Do not drive faster than the law for that road. Do not cross the red light. Do not this and this. Be careful. Watch, look around. Do not deal with the coffee or with the cell phone while you're driving. That's responsibility. The result is you have less chances to hit somebody by mistake. Right? So what if you were responsible, you've been responsible, and you hit somebody? You know, the difference between cause and effect in this world are not always visible. People who tend to hurt people because they're so busy with themselves usually have the tendency to hurt people by mistake later on in life. But I didn't mean to. Yeah, but how many people you hurt before that without meaning to, just because you're so busy focusing on yourself? And now, here the accident comes, and you have to run to refuge city. The refuge cities, the biblical refugees were the cities of the Levites. Now the Levites were not, did not get any lands in the Holy Land. They were not cities of agriculture. So what they have left was teach. It was like the universities, cities. So you couldn't leave the city. What could you do? Study. You could study. Why you could study? Finally, seek and study. Maybe you'll find out what I have done wrong, so I can change myself and take responsibility. That was the thing. So, if a person hurt somebody by mistake, he should be sit in a way. Today, you get some points by when you're being caught doing all kinds of driving offenses, and then you go to school to study about driving. But it's not about driving. The word in Hebrew for driving is linhog. Linhog in Hebrew means also the way you behave. Minhag, your customs, your behavior. You have faults in the way you behave. Is something in your nature that has to be changed. So, driving schools, correctional driving schools should be more emotional driving schools, because its behavioral patterns in Hebrew is nehiga. It's the same word. It's the way you are and what you are that has to be changed. So yes, you got only 3 years in jail, but you still killed somebody that had family. And something has to be changed if you don't get the message. You hate the whole society because why do you have to sit 3 years in jail? I didn't see the guy, whatever. And people are living in denial. And then you're being miserable also, or you can still be in guilt. I'm guilty, I could have done that, That's another way to not to take responsibility. Taking responsibility between stop being a slave is what in my life, in my habits, in my behavioral patterns do I have to change? Where is it that I have to take heavenly yoke and take responsibility for what I do, for what I feel, for what the people around me feel because of my actions, for the environment, because it's all the same story. And that's why this parasha is a very special parasha, because this is the final parasha of 6 weeks of focal point on fixing ourselves, learning how to become free people. And becoming free people means how stop being slaves, stop blaming other people, circumstances, God, no matter what, and taking responsibility, saying, it depends on me. A free person takes responsibility. And that's the whole thing. I'll just get another example of how do you look at things in a different way. There are laws, a lot of laws about stealing, for instance, in this parasha. If the thief is stealing a cow, if you find him with a steal, if he sold it already. And Rabbi Zakloria, in the Gates, one of his volumes of the Gates of the Mitzvot, he says about Parashat Mishpatim. And he says, the sages say that whoever steals from his friend something of the minimal worth, it's like he's stealing his soul away. How could you say something like this? We already explained. And the matter is that every soul, says Dari, is included of 248 organs. And every organ is included also for many, many sparks of light. A human being is not physical organs only. It's a light that's within. It's the soul that's within, and the soul is a structure of light. As we said, when the soul is empty, you can fill it up, not with food, not with money, not with chemicals. You can have a little surge of energy with all of these chemicals people take today, and then it's over with, and it was all superficial and artificial. The real one is when you connect to the light, as we said. So, this is the consciousness. And the more light that the soul has, that's the amount of bliss that is coming from above. Because if you if you connect it to a lot of bliss from within you, by creating that kind of responsibility and awareness, the word awareness has the same root as awe. The awe of God, and awe of God is not fear. Awe means connection. In Hebrew is zir'ah. It's the same letters as reya, seeing, connecting. So, the same amount of light and bliss that you connect and you arouse within yourself by your spiritual work of taking responsibility, as we said, that's how much bliss you get from above. And this bliss can manifest also with your physical success, money, that you have in this physical world. So, if you understand that every penny that you have is a result of the bliss coming from above, and the Hebrew word for luck, mazal, is coming from the root nun zayin lamed, nozel, flow. So luck is like in English leak. Whatever leaks from above, that's your luck. You want to change your leak or your luck, you have to open the pipes. How do you open the pipes? Expand your awareness. Connect stronger to the light of the Creator. Luck is not something that is imposed on you. It's something you create by being responsible, by taking responsibility to your connection to the Creator. That's what they're saying. And if you understand that, we found out that when somebody is stealing from a person his money, they steal the supreme bliss that is coming from above. Can you steal bliss? No, you can't. You can steal the container, but you cannot steal the light within. That's why a thief, no matter if the person stole an object, or he stole a bank by cheating the numbers, or stole the investor's money by swinging the whole money away in a way that it looks like, oh, there's no more company, what can I do? We went bankrupt, and meanwhile the money goes to your account. Or collecting donations from people, and then not saying that you're using this money for yourself alone, by a big amount of salaries that you really take people's money that they gave for something else. That's also stealing. All of this is about you cannot steal bliss, which means you cannot take that light to yourself. You can steal only the external. You will never be happy when you take what is not yours. That's one thing we learn. That's why it says do not steal. On the other hand, if you take the physical manifestation, the money, that person you stole from cannot enjoy from that money anymore. You stole the manifestation of the bliss he got. You stole the sparks of his soul. So he's stealing from his soul what is given from him to him from above. And therefore, that's a crime in stealing. You hurt somebody's soul with it. Sometimes you discover that somebody stole your money and you feel hurt. The hurt is not just a mental hurt of the lack of security. It's much deeper. It's because light, sparks of light is being robbed from you. And the payment, the thief has to pay. Not this lifetime, next lifetime. Not the next lifetime, the life after. That's the rules that you have to pay back, and you have to pay at least twice. Why? Once you have to give back what you took. Twice you have to feel the pain of losing what you've been creating, because why did you steal? You were not sensitive enough, careful enough, responsible enough to understand that you hurt the universe when you create so much pain by stealing other people's money. Now you have to feel the same feeling as a process till you understand that it's wrong, till it comes from awareness and freedom that you don't do that. Why? But you can take the money. They have enough, they will never notice. Yeah, but you can't do that. If you want money, work for it. Make it honest, with honest way of work, with responsibility. On the other hand, if you give money to charity, that's something else, because whatever you give of consciousness to others, you create a flow from above to you. But if somebody takes it without awareness from you, robs it from you, that's something else. This is, you're taking somebody else's, the thief is taking the free choice away from the person you steal the money from. He could have given to you for free, if you just asked him, or not. But you cannot get the money, the bliss inside the money, without the consent of the person that is giving you the money. Even in trade. Even in trade. So, you have examples, but that's what this parasha is about. Fixing that within. Read the parasha and try to find how to apply every rule to become responsible, to become a real free human being. Thank you.